Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni miliwanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their principal, their librarian, and also please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcasts. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events. Written by Kelly Sanchez, it is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. As an educator and a mother, author Kelly Sanchez put her 20 years of experience working with kids into writing Skipper, Friend or Foe. This is a powerful coming-of-age middle-grade novel that you and your kids will absolutely love. It's going to launch some really important conversations within your family, and it's going to help kids who are going through tough times, letting them know that their feelings, whatever they are normal. You can get your copy today at Amazon. Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events, written by Kelly Sanchez. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by At Nighttime, We're All the Same Size, written by Murray Sawchuck. Some of you might recognize the name Murray Sawchuck. He's also known as Murray the Magician. He has been a Las Vegas headlining performer for decades. Phenomenal performer. Murray was on the podcast not too long ago, and he told me that he was inspired to write this book over the pandemic when he noticed that his rescue pup, Bailey, a little chihuahua, was terrified of anybody that was standing over him. But when the person would lie down, and when Bailey could be eye to eye with that person, well, then Bailey was really quick to cuddle up and get close to that person. Murray hopes this book will inspire all of us to spend more time trying to see eye to eye to get along and to not judge a book by its cover. You're going to love this book. It really is adorable. It's really cute, and you're just going to love it. At Nighttime, We Are All the Same Size, written by Murray Sawchuck. Join us right now from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new debut picture book. It's called Frizzy Lizzy. Please welcome to the show, Liz Leonard. Hey, Liz, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, Jed. It's a pleasure to be here.
I should have introduced you as the decidedly not frizzy Liz Leonard, because I understand that Frizzy Lizzy was inspired, it's kind of autobiographical?
Yes, it is. It is autobiographical, and unfortunately, I do have curly hair. But unfortunately, I did a terrible thing that many people with curly hair do, unfortunately, and chemically straightened it many, many years ago. So on a personal note, that has been a challenge for me. But luckily, my daughter, Isabella, has very curly hair. So I've fortunately passed that on to her.
That's what, isn't it weird? So my beautiful wife has, and my daughter, both have curly hair, not really tight curls, but curly hair. And they take this thing called a curling iron and they straighten their hair. Mm-hmm. And I have a niece who has very straight hair and she uses the same device to curl it. It seems like we're never happy with what we've been born with.
Yes, and that is definitely a lot of the inspiration for the book, right? It's important for children to be proud of who they are and sort of not be influenced by, all of the digital things that we are influenced by these days. So That is very much a strong undertone of the book, obviously by the title, but yes.
So tell us a little bit more about the story we're going to experience when we sit down and read Frizzy Lizzy with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, Frizzy Lizzy is about a 7-year-old girl. She has, of course, very frizzy hair, very curly hair. She also has purple in her hair. And the purple is meant to signify a couple different things. But there's seems to be a little bit of magic that she's capable of. And when I say magic, I mean sort of everyday serendipitous magic. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But she's the youngest of 3 sisters. She's often made fun of by her older sisters. She carries a pocketbook. She always seems to be prepared. And her parents are divorced, which I felt was very important to include in the book, because that is the reality for so many children these days. She's kind of spunky and creative and clever. And in terms of the story, which again is based on a true story, she spends the weekends with her dad, and she loves doing so because they spend a lot of time outdoors. They do, biking and hiking, and one day their father explains to them that there is a secret lake in the woods that they've never seen. So they journey off into the woods, and of course, Frizzy Lizzy takes her pocketbook with her, and they end up getting extremely lost. And unfortunately, their father was not prepared, which many people have been skeptical about, but I assure you that part is true. And they find themselves sort of on the side of a highway, but the father doesn't have his wallet, and so there's not much that they can do. So Frizzy Lizzy ends up saving the day because, of course, in her pocketbook is some money and a snack. And the money is used for a payphone, which many children these days don't know what that is. But it is used to call their stepmother, who ends up picking them up.
Very, very cool. Of course, being a dad, I love the fact that this is a story about a daughter and a dad. And my daughter and I found ourselves broken down on the side of the highway at least a couple of times. She used to come out and tour with me doing my educational magic shows. And, and we always seemed to break down in like the middle of nowhere. But that's such a neat story. I know that the book was inspired by your life, but what was it that inspired you to share this story as a kid's book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really 3 things inspired me. One is becoming a mother. It's just such an incredible, really ongoing journey that is unexplainable, but just such a magical thing in itself. And so, as I'm sure you know well, we all spend a lot of our times tucking in our children and reading them bedtime stories. So that definitely sparked creativity, which is actually part of my background. I went to art school. I studied fine art. And I actually did animation. So I've always been a storyteller. But working a corporate job, I felt like I lost some of that creativity. Mm-hmm. So I started the project, and it was about a 2-year journey. And I really just wanted to speak to children who don't necessarily have an atypical family situation. I did have a pretty complex childhood, and want to sort of speak to that, to help children and to normalize, some of the challenges that, many kids face, on a daily basis.
That's interesting. The idea that kids, because I think one of the things that as adults we do is we sit down and we think, oh, kids, they have it so easy. Their life is great. They go to school, they have summers off, and they go to ballet. But as you were sharing, your own life was pretty complicated, and you're not unique in that. And there are lots of kids' lives who are pretty complicated. And I remember my daughter, one of her best friends, her parents split up, and she would spend 3 days a week with her mom and 3 days a week with her dad. And then there was a day that was kind of tossed up, and she had 2 sets of clothes, 2 sets of everything. And, I love the mom, I love the dad, I love the girl, but it just seemed like, wow, this is a lot for a kid to have to deal with. Can you talk a little bit about, growing up in that situation and how it made you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, divorce is just such a complicated thing, as you said, for a child to live through. And, to be honest with you, actually, my parents separated when I was very young. I was about 3 years old. But my sister, remembers a lot of what occurred. And it was just a very ugly divorce. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things happen amicably. Unfortunately, in my situation, it didn't. And so there was, a lot of, court battles and custody battles, that we were, of course, thrown into the middle of, as children. It's interesting, actually. My husband and I, one of our very good friends, who has a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old, is actually getting a divorce right now. And I just feel, so bad for the children, because, the parents have to sit them down and have to explain to them, what is happening. And for a 6-year-old that really truly understands the complexity of that, and, it can be isolating, it can be confusing, and just honestly quite sad. Mm-hmm. Your family, your rock, is no longer, together as a crew. So, mm-hmm. It can be a strange journey. But yeah.
And I think it's important for us to really consider that. Thankfully, my parents, it was tough. Our family was dysfunctional in many ways, and I think now, if that family situation had been, transported 4 or 5 decades into today, I'm sure my mom would have left my dad. But they kind of worked it out, and in the long run, they were very happy together. But it's so difficult on the kids, and I think the cliche is you see the parents in the sitcom sit down with the kids and say, "Oh, but it's not your fault." Exactly. And that makes it okay. And now the kid says, "Oh, thank goodness it's not my fault. Now I can live in these different households and not worry about it at all." It's an ongoing thing. And I think there are lots of parents out there that are very sensitive to that and, are dealing with it and giving the kids the support they need. But I don't know if every family is aware of the turmoil that they put their kids through, or that kids have to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, I think, even to go back to our friend that I referenced earlier, I mean, they are doing an incredible job. We spent some time with them as they were going through this, and the parents were together, right? And so they're keeping their unit together, even though there's clearly been a very dynamic change between, the husband and wife in this situation. But I respect them tremendously for, approaching it in a manner like that, because it is very important.
It sounds like they're very much aware of what's going on with their kids, and just because you decide that you can't live together anymore doesn't mean that you have to hate the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, this interview got very, very deep, and we should be back and talking about nice, fun, frizzy hair. What is it about frizzy, curly hair that you miss the most?
Well, it's just wild and free, and it's almost artistic by nature, right? It just has its own personality. It's a crown. I mean, it's just awesome. And, I think women need to be proud of who they are and, what they're supposed to look like, not what the world tells us, what we're supposed to look like. So, it's important to instill confidence in children. I think all the time, one day my daughter's going to come to me and, say, can I straighten my hair? And we're going to have a little talk about that. Of course, I guess I'll let her do what she wants to do, but I hope she doesn't want to do that. But I think, Frizzy Lizzy, also, stands up to a little bit of bullying. That often happens, with her older siblings. So there's definitely, a light, touch on, sibling relationships as well. Which is lovely. But her sisters do have straight hair. She's the only one with curly hair.
The only lucky one with curly hair.
Exactly.
I'd love to, this sounds like a really fun book, and it sounds like you've hit it out of the park in your first, at bat. But one of the things I'm really impressed with is I'm on your website, and lots of authors come on and they talk about, this is going to be part of a series, and we have, 2 books, 3 books planned, maybe 4 books. But I'm looking at your website, and wow, there are, I think, 11 Frizzy Lizzy books in the works and some sort of in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually having a book launch party in a couple weeks here, and I'll be revealing the cover for the next book in the series, which is about friendship. And so I don't want to reveal too much, but Frizzy Lizzy does make a friend, which of course is very important. But yeah, I mean, this is such a passion for me. It's been incredible. I've partnered with an amazing illustrator. With a full-time job, I knew that I couldn't, illustrate this myself, but her style very much mirrored what some of my older drawings used to look like. I also have to respect her time, right? Because as I'm trying to push out these books, of course she needs time to create her, highly detailed work. So I think I'm going to take this series, in a lot of different directions. I work in the travel industry, full time. And so, I love the idea of, having Frizzy Lizzy visit different cities and different destinations. I think travel, is something that, makes us more aware of the world and the cultures around us. I'm fortunate that I get to do that, often. And some children don't. So I'd love to kind of take them on a trip, with Frizzy Lizzy to different destinations. So that's another angle I'll be eventually going in for sure.
Well, I love that too, because in addition to helping kids learn how to love themselves and accept themselves, I think it's really important for us to help our kids understand that this is a big, beautiful, diverse world, but it doesn't matter what language a person speaks or what they look like or what they dress like. We're all part of one beautiful human family, and travel is one way to help us understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any reaction so far from your daughter about the book and kind of reading about your story through these pages?
Yes. So she is just over 2.5 years old. It's funny. She knows the book by heart. I used to read it to her just from my cell phone as it was a manuscript, before the illustration started to, get in the works. She knows it by heart. She loves it. She just asked me today, can we read Frizzy Lizzy? I think she thinks it's about her, which is totally fine because that's the point, right? Everybody has a little Frizzy Lizzy in them. We want everybody to be, proud of who they are and be confident. So, So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. I've learned a lot about the book industry and how books are created, and I know that there are kind of two ways that picture books come into life. And one way is where the author, you kind of work with an illustrator and kind of direct them and give them ideas, and then the illustrator comes in. A lot of the bigger publishing houses, they'll buy a manuscript and they'll say, so long to the author, and give it to an illustrator, and the author will never see anything from the illustrator until the book is done. With somebody with a background in illustration and art, was it hard for you to sit down and let this go and let your illustrator have at it and just be as creative as they can be?
Well, actually, no, not at all, because it's such a collaboration. I just, to your point, first of all, I didn't have the time to really pitch this to publishers. But secondly, I knew that I would be letting go of the creative aspect and the control and the illustration, which was like incredibly important to me for this project and for all of my projects moving forward. So I found, Katherine Hillier, who's my illustrator, and I storyboarded the whole thing. I drew it out myself. I mean, every single detail in the book is intentional, was decided by me. So I really oversee the art direction, down to the color of their shoelaces. So, I sometimes drive her crazy, but she is so incredible. She's actually based in the countryside, about an hour outside of London. She's amazing. So it wasn't challenging to let it go, because in many ways, and now we have we're like best friends. We're very far away. But she's incredible. And I love the collaboration. I love, being able to go back and forth and say, I don't know if the sneaker should be red. What do you think? Maybe should we go, send me a couple different options. And, there's a lot of Easter eggs in the illustrations. I had her, put her initials on the pocketbook. So many little things. So, it's a pleasure to work with her. And she's just incredibly talented, and she really is a freelance illustrator, full time. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. As I'm looking at your website, I see that Lizzie's going to go to Paris and Hong Kong and Tokyo and some other places. Where is your favorite place to travel?
Ooh, wow. That's a tough question. I spent a lot of time in Ghana in West Africa. It is such an incredible place, and I have to say that is definitely what comes to mind when you ask that question. I was actually on the board of a humanitarian organization, and we did humanitarian efforts and medical efforts there. Spent a lot of time with children. Went for 4 years and made a lot of friends. It is a beautiful country. The people are incredible. I actually spent some time in a Liberian refugee camp. I can't say enough. It's such a special place to me, and I'm really, really hoping to take my family there. But it's a little complicated. Mm-hmm. There's lots of shots that you need, and most importantly, I want my daughter, who we call Izzy, I want Izzy to remember the trip. And so I think we're going to wait on that. But if you have the opportunity, I encourage you to go to Accra, which is the capital, and Cape Coast as well. Just an incredible country.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, speaking of travel, we need to let our listeners know where they can travel to find out more about you and find out more about Frizzy Lizzy.
Absolutely. Well, they can go to frizzylizzy.com. All of the places that you can buy the book on Amazon, all of the major websites. But I do have available on my site some author signed copies, which I'd encourage everyone to purchase. I also I'm trying to get better at Instagram, so you can check me out there at Frizzy Lizzy Books.
We've had a really fun time speaking to the author of Frizzy Lizzy, debut picture book from our guest, Liz Leonard. Liz, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed. It was a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedly Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading With Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here in the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guest. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
What?